Okay, let's talk about how to prepare a speech that doesn't just get said, but actually works. One that really lands with your audience. And look, this isn't just for a big stage. This is a skill that can totally set you apart at work, in class, really anytime you need to get an idea across.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You're trapped in your chair, just watching the seconds tick by while someone just drones on. That feeling, that's almost always because of bad preparation. But the good news is, we're going to make sure that you're the person up there who people are listening to, not the one they're trying to escape from.
And what's so wild about this is that none of this is new. The basics of a killer speech, they were laid out like 2,400 years ago by Aristotle in On Rhetoric. So if the instruction manual has been around for that long, why are so many speeches today still so flat? Well, it's because most people think that giving a great speech is some kind of magical talent. You're either born with it or you're not. But that is a total myth. The real secret? It isn't talent. It's a process. It's just a system, a blueprint that anyone, and I mean anyone, can learn and follow to build a speech that connects. And that whole process kicks off with the single most important rule of public speaking. And it kind of flips everything on its head. It is never about you. It's always, always about them. That's why step one, the foundation for the entire thing, is knowing your audience. So the very first question you have to ask yourself is, who am I actually talking to? And you can't just assume everyone thinks the same way or comes from the same place. A really good speaker just assumes the room is diverse. They build their message to connect with everybody, especially that one person in the back who might see the world totally differently. And to really get who your audience is, you gotta go deeper than just surface level stuff. We need to get what makes them tick on a psychological level. It helps to think of it in 3 layers, kind of like this. So on the outside, you've got attitudes, simple likes and dislikes. Those are pretty easy to influence. Dig a little deeper and you hit their beliefs, what they think is true or false. But right at the very center, you find their values, their deep down sense of right and wrong. And here's the thing. If your message goes against those core values, you're not just going to have a hard time. You are going to hit a brick wall. You also have to think about why they're even in the room. Are they a captive audience? Like a required company meeting where they have to be there? If so, man, you're going to have to work a lot harder to get and keep their attention. Or are they a voluntary audience, people who chose to show up? Great, they're already interested, but they also have some high expectations you're going to have to live up to. And this is why doing all that homework on your audience is so worth it. When you really get who they are, you can shape your message so it feels like you're talking directly to them. Because let's be real, a speech that's designed for everyone usually ends up connecting with no one. All right, so once you know who you're talking to, the next obvious step is figuring out what you want to accomplish with them. This is where you define your mission. And it all starts with just brainstorming. Let's say you want to talk about dogs. Well, that's way too huge for one speech, right? So you have to narrow it down. You can see here how you might go from something broad like dogs to owning a dog, and then get even more focused, like the 3 main ways people get dogs. See, now you've got something you can actually work with. Once you have that focus, you write what's called your specific purpose. Now, this part is super important, and it's for your eyes only. You never actually say this sentence in the speech. It's your secret mission statement. It's one sentence, and it's all about the audience. It spells out exactly what you want them to know or feel or do by the end. The thesis statement, though, that is for the audience. This is the one-sentence summary of your main idea that you actually say out loud, usually in your intro. It's all about the content. It tells them, hey, here's the exact point I'm going to explain. It's the promise you're making to them. So you know your audience, and you've got your mission. You have the blueprint. Now you need the actual building materials. It's time to build your case with solid, believable evidence. Research isn't really a straight line from A to B. It's more like a cycle. You kind of start broad just to get a feel for the topic. Then you dive in and do more focused research on the specifics. But the key part is that you constantly have to check if your sources are any good before you start weaving them into your speech. And where you get your info is a really big deal. Using your library's databases gets you to academic journals that are peer-reviewed. That's the gold standard. A site like Wikipedia, it can be an okay place to start just to get some background. But because literally anyone can edit it, you can't use it as a credible source to build your argument on. So what are you looking for when you're doing this research? You're looking for supporting material that makes your ideas come alive. You're hunting for things like great examples, surprising statistics, and powerful stories. These aren't just dry facts, they're the tools you use to paint a really vivid, memorable picture for your audience. Let me show you what I mean. Take a look at this number, 1.3 billion. It's huge, yeah, but right now, it's totally meaningless. It doesn't have any context. It doesn't make you feel anything.
But what if I told you that's how many people on this planet live without access to electricity? Whoa. Suddenly, that number has some weight. And when you make it relatable, that's about 1 out of every 5 people, it becomes even more powerful. So the lesson here is, don't just throw out numbers. Make them surprising. Make them understandable. Testimony is another amazing tool. This quote is from an incredibly famous speech by Mary Fisher about the AIDS crisis back in the 90s. When you use the words of someone with firsthand experience, you add a layer of emotion and credibility that numbers alone just can't touch. It makes an issue feel real and human.
So we've gone through all the different pieces. Let's wrap it all up into a simple little playbook that you can use for pretty much any speech you ever have to give. Here it is, your 3-step plan. First, analyze your audience. Always, always start with them. Second, define your mission. Figure out your purpose and your main idea. And third, build your case with good, solid evidence. That's it. That's the process. It really is that straightforward. See? When you follow this process, it takes all the mystery out of public speaking. It stops being this thing you have to be afraid of and turns into a real opportunity to connect with people and make a difference. So the only question left is, what's your next speech going to be about?